After his marriage and Montana escape, Jeff thought he had found the balance. But Hollywood wasn't going to let him disappear quietly. In 1976, King Kong hit theaters with Jeff in the starring role. At the time, it was the most expensive movie ever made, costing over $24 million with more than $8 million spent just on promotion. Expectations were sky high, and Jeff was suddenly on every magazine cover. The film smashed box office records, making nearly $90 million worldwide. But success came with strings attached. Studios locked him into relentless interviews, commercial tours, and endless contract negotiations. Jeff later joked that the giant monkey didn't just grab the damsel in distress, it grabbed him too. He couldn't shake free. Then, in 1982, Jeff stepped into the futuristic world of Tron. It was one of the first films to ever use extensive digital effects, and even the animators were skeptical. The Academy refused to nominate it for visual effects, calling computer animation cheating. Jeff himself wasn't sure what to make of it. During rehearsals, he nervously asked the director, "Do you think computers might replace actors one day?" The fear written on his face in the movie wasn't acting. It was real. He was terrified of being replaced, not just by another actor, but by a machine. 2 years later, in Starman 1984, Jeff delivered what critics called one of the most haunting performances of the decade. To play an alien learning to move like a human, Jeff erased every natural habit. He stopped slouching, stopped blinking randomly, and even studied dances to mimic unfamiliar body language. The performance earned him another Oscar nomination, but the role left him fractured. For months after filming wrapped, Jeff didn't feel like himself. He booked weekly therapy sessions in Santa Monica just to find Jeff again. Behind the success, cracks were forming. In the mid-1980s, Jeff started drinking more heavily. During the filming of Against All Odds in Mexico, he admitted to late nights fueled by tequila and exhaustion. One journalist even witnessed him vomiting during an interview. What started as fun had become dependency. Even his marriage was strained. In 1985, Jeff starred opposite Glenn Close in Jagged Edge. The film was steamy, and tabloids ran photos of their beach house scenes. For Susan, this was different. She'd tolerated decades of flirtations on set, but this crossed the line. She gave Jeff a sharp warning, "One more part like that, and I'm done." Hollywood was giving Jeff fame, money, and awards, but it was also slowly testing the limits of his marriage, his sanity, and his freedom. Then came 1998, the role that would haunt Jeff Bridges for the rest of his life, The Big Lebowski. When it was first released, the movie flopped at the box office. Critics didn't get it, but slowly it grew. Midnight screenings sold out, fans quoted lines back at the screen, and before long, Jeff's character, the Dude, wasn't just a role, but it was a religion, literally. On April 20th, 2005, fans created Dudism, a parody religion based on Jeff's character. Within a decade, more than 600,000 people worldwide had declared themselves Dudist priests. At events like Lebowski Fest, fans lined up for Jeff to bless their white Russians. At first, Jeff laughed it off, but soon it turned unsettling. Strangers followed him into bathrooms. People acted as if he actually lived in that bathrobe. He later admitted the whole thing freaked him out. But the strangest part wasn't the fans. It was his daughters. When the DVD came out in 1999, his three girls, Isabel, Jessica, and Haley, suddenly had classmates quoting their father at them. At dinner one night, they handed him a handwritten note titled, "Why It's Weird You're Famous." They begged him to get a normal desk job like the other dads. They were teased at school about his swearing. Jeff kept that note for decades. In a 2014 interview, he pulled it out with pride. His toughest critics weren't movie reviewers or Hollywood insiders. They were the three kids sitting at his dinner table. To the world, the Dude was hilarious, iconic, immortal. But to Jeff, it was a mask he couldn't take off. He became trapped by a role he never expected to define him. By 2009, Jeff was exhausted. He had spent decades playing damaged men, and he almost turned down another one in Crazy Heart. But director Scott Cooper begged him, and music legend T-Bone Burnett signed on. Jeff finally agreed, but only if he could sing his own songs. The film cost $7 million to make. It earned nearly $40 million and swept awards season. Jeff Bridges finally won his first Oscar. At the 2010 Academy Awards, his acceptance speech was raw. He thanked his parents, his wife Susan, his daughters. His voice cracked. He called acting a groovy profession. To the audience, it looked like joy. To those who knew him, it sounded more like relief. After 4 decades, he had finally proven himself, but it hadn't erased the fear. Then, in October 2020, Jeff stunned fans again. He tweeted that he had been diagnosed with follicular non-Hodgkin lymphoma, a type of blood cancer. The tumor in his abdomen was the size of a football. He started chemo immediately. 6 rounds mixed with antibody therapy. The tumor shrank, but halfway through treatment, Jeff contracted COVID-19. With his immune system destroyed, his lungs collapsed. He spent 5 weeks in ICU, unable to stand for more than 45 seconds. He lost 35 pounds and much of his hair. Doctors later said his early vaccine may have saved his life. But Jeff himself said something chilling. Cancer was nothing compared to COVID. While in recovery, Jeff read through letters his mother had written to his father decades earlier. In them, he discovered something shocking. His parents' marriage had nearly ended in 1969. Lloyd had even filed for early divorce papers while filming a Western. Jeff had grown up believing they had the perfect love. But now he saw the truth. Those letters shook him. He began having deeper conversations with Susan about money, fear, and gratitude. Their bond grew stronger, but reality was brutal. Between chemo, ICU, and oxygen treatments, his hospital bills totaled over $3 million. To keep his union health insurance, Jeff had to go back to work. He returned to filming The Old Man, an FX thriller that had paused during COVID. At first, he could only film 45 seconds at a time before needing oxygen. But the role was praised, not because of his acting, but because he looked so real, like a man who had fought through hell. Jeff Bridges wasn't just performing anymore. He was surviving. On April 29, 2024, Jeff Bridges walked onto the stage at Alice Tully Hall in New York to accept the 49th Chaplin Award. The tuxedo was crisp. The crowd filled with Hollywood legends, the moment built for celebration. But when he began speaking, the words shocked everyone. "I never actually wanted to become an actor," he confessed. He described panic attacks as a teenager, hiding in garages for hours to avoid rehearsing with his father. He read directly from his old journals. "Acting feels like wearing someone else's skin. Itchy and wrong." The room went silent for 6 full seconds. Then applause thundered through the hall. Even now, Jeff admits the fear hasn't left him. In March 2025, while filming Tron Ares, his heart rate spiked to 148 beats per minute, higher than during his chemo. He wakes up at 4 a.m. on shoot days, terrified he'll forget how to act. The fear, he told reporters, is louder than the tumors ever were. Jeff Bridges, the reluctant actor, the man who gave us The Dude, Starman, Crazy Heart, and True Grit, never found peace in Hollywood. But maybe that's what made him unforgettable. Jeff Bridges spent a lifetime giving audiences characters they'll never forget. But his own truth was far more complicated. Born into Hollywood, he fought against it. He chased art, music, and freedom, only to be dragged back into acting again and again. He earned fame, fortune, and awards, yet he carried panic, self-doubt, and fear into every role. Even at the height of success, he never stopped wondering what life might have been like if he had followed a different path. His story leaves us with one haunting question. If someone like Jeff Bridges, with all the talent, money, and acclaim in the world, never found peace under the spotlight, does true peace ever exist for anyone in Hollywood? Jeff Bridges once stood in front of Hollywood's elite at 75 years old. The lights hit him, the crowd hushed, and the cameras zoomed in, expecting the usual polite words of gratitude. After all, this was The Dude, an Oscar winner and one of America's most beloved actors. But instead of celebrating, he stunned everyone with a confession no one saw coming. He admitted that after 60 years in the business, after all the awards, money, and adoration, he had never truly wanted to be an actor at all. He described acting as wearing someone else's skin, uncomfortable, itchy, and wrong. The silence in the room was heavy. Then came applause, loud and long. But behind that applause was the question everyone was asking. How could Jeff Bridges, a man born into Hollywood, spend his life trying to escape it? This is the untold story of Jeff Bridges, the reluctant legend who tried again and again to run from fame, only to be pulled back in. Jeffrey Leon Bridges was born on December 4, 1949, into a world most kids can't even imagine. His parents, Lloyd and Dorothy Bridges, weren't just actors, they were household names. Movie lights, scripts, and set visits weren't unusual. They were his everyday life. At only 6 months old, baby Jeff had already made his film debut. The movie was The Company She Keeps, released in 1951. In it, Jane Greer gave him a small pinch to make him cry on cue. On the studio record, he wasn't even listed by name. Just crying baby. Jeff would later joke that his first paycheck probably went to diapers and milk, but without realizing it, his Hollywood journey had begun before he even spoke his first word. But if the world thought this was destiny, Jeff himself didn't see it that way. By the late 1950s, Lloyd Bridges had become a major star. His fame exploded after High Noon and his long-running show Sea Hunt. But even as he enjoyed the perks of stardom, Lloyd distrusted the industry. He knew firsthand how unstable it was. One night, sometime around 1957, Lloyd sat Jeff and his older brother Beau down and told them something shocking. He explained that most actors made less than $5,000 a year, barely enough to survive. He even brought printed numbers to prove it. His message was clear. Acting wasn't a stable future. He told them to focus on school. If they wanted to act, their grades had to be at least a B+. And he pushed them to consider careers outside Hollywood, maybe engineering. That planted a seed of doubt in Jeff. If acting wasn't safe, if it wasn't real, then maybe he didn't want it at all. By age 13, he made his feelings clear. On his bedroom door, he scrawled 3 words that would define the next stage of his life. Not an actor. Instead of chasing auditions, Jeff chased passions of his own. He threw himself into art at Brentwood Art Center. He painted obsessively, selling his first canvas for $35 in 1964. He joined a surf rock band, the Nozzles, and played small gigs around Santa Monica. His high school years were filled with trophies for painting and music, not drama. Jeff was sending a message. He didn't want to be just Lloyd Bridges' son. He wanted to carve out a life on his own terms. But Los Angeles in the 1960s wasn't just about art and music. It was about counterculture, parties, and drugs. And Jeff, like many teenagers, was about to get caught up in the dangerous side of it all. By the mid-1960s, Jeff was living like a typical rebellious California teen. But his choices were taking him down a dark path. By 16, he was smoking marijuana before math class, experimenting with LSD during jam sessions in Topanga Canyon, and drifting further from the discipline his father wanted for him. The turning point came in September 1967. Police pulled him over in his Volkswagen Beetle and found a roach. Jeff was a minor, so instead of arresting him, they called his father. Lloyd was furious. His mother, Dorothy, was heartbroken. The family reacted fast. Dorothy arranged counseling. Lloyd personally drove Jeff to 2 rehab meetings that fall. Jeff later admitted he felt like he was about to miss the off-ramp in life. He knew he was on the verge of spinning out of control. But lectures and punishments weren't working. So Lloyd tried something different. One morning over breakfast, he told Jeff something that stuck forever. Acting can be freedom. It's the only job where you can do everything. Be a musician, a pilot, an artist, without having to choose just one. Suddenly, acting didn't feel like a trap. It felt like an escape route. Jeff began taking small roles, not out of passion, but out of practicality. His first job on Sea Hunt was less about chasing Hollywood and more about affording a new Stratocaster guitar. It was Lloyd's quiet trick. Acting was now the way to fund Jeff's independence. But even then, Jeff didn't want to fully commit to Hollywood. Instead, at 17, he made a bold move that would slow down his acting career before it ever took off. On May 12, 1967, Jeff walked into a recruiting office and signed up for the Coast Guard Reserve. His service would last 8 years. It kept him out of the Vietnam draft, but it came with tough work. Cleaning boys, pulling night shifts, scraping rust from ship decks. Jeff later said it felt like torture, but it gave him structure and discipline he badly needed. And the schedule left him just enough room to act during breaks. That's when Hollywood started knocking louder. In 1971, Jeff landed The Last Picture Show. The film was raw, real, and a huge success. At just 22, he earned his first Oscar nomination. Suddenly, the boy who wrote "Not an Actor" on his bedroom door was one of the most talked about young stars in America. By 1974, He earned another nomination for Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. His future looked unstoppable. But instead of leaning in, Jeff leaned away. He rented studios in Venice, painted ocean scenes and played music. He even told his father he might stop acting altogether. It was clear Jeff could never fully trust Hollywood. Even as it pulled him in, he kept looking for ways to escape, and then, on a Montana film set in 1975, he met someone who would completely change the direction of his life. It was the summer of 1975 during the filming of Rancho Deluxe. Jeff Bridges looked up from his script and saw a woman working in the dining room at Chico Hot Springs Hotel. She wasn't dressed for Hollywood glamour. She was waiting tables with 2 black eyes and a freshly broken nose from an accident. But Jeff couldn't stop staring. He stumbled over his lines. The crew teased him about it constantly. Her name was Susan Gueston. She was an economics student working at the lodge for the summer. When Jeff asked her out, she flatly said no. But Montana is small. A few nights later, they crossed paths again, this time at the wrap party. They danced awkwardly, but neither wanted to let go. The very next morning, they toured ranches together by the river. Jeff later said he felt an instant voice inside telling him, "Don't let this place or this woman get away." Still, Jeff wasn't sure. His whole life had been about resisting permanence. He liked drifting between art, music, and acting. But in 1977, Susan forced the issue. She looked at him and said, "I'm to have children and put down roots, either with you or without you." That hit him like a brick. Within days, he proposed on a windy beach in Zuma, with a turquoise ring pulled from his jeans pocket. They married 5 days later, on June 5, 1977. It was a small backyard wedding, but it grounded Jeff. For the first time, he had someone who kept him tethered. By 1979, Jeff purchased 320 acres outside Livingston, Montana. He built a cedar cabin with no phone. He skipped auditions to paint and fish. His agent panicked, calling it career suicide. Studios complained, but Jeff had found his sanctuary. This was the rhythm Jeff wanted, Hollywood on his terms. Work when he needed to, then retreat to Montana. But Hollywood's grip was tightening.